So I got the iPhone 15 Pro Max and the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and I'm going to talk about the differences and kind of compare the two. And at the end of the video, I'm going to answer the question, is it worth upgrading from the iPhone 14 Pro Max to the iPhone 15 Pro Max? And also, while we're at it, this is the last gold Pro iPhone that Apple made. Maybe they might make it in the future, who knows, but they don't have it for the 15 Pro and Pro Max. So this is the last gold that we'll see for now. And also this is the blue titanium 15 Pro Max. Let's start things off with design. But before I do, I quickly want to just share with you guys my latest wallpaper pack, which is the sponsor of this video. It's called Vortex. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below if you want to check it out, and does support the channel out a lot. So let's take a look at the 15 Pro Max right here. Definitely love the build of it. Now, when you look at it overall, it's about the same, so it's still an iPhone. You know that if you're rocking this or this, it's an iPhone. 15 Pro Max has curved sides along the flat edges, which fits much more comfortably than the 14 Pro Max. Like, this has flat edges, but it's really flat and less curved. And the 15 Pro Max also uses grade 5 titanium around the sides. It's important to note that out because it's not built out of just full 100% titanium. Same thing with the Pro Max. It's not full stainless steel. It's the sides right here of the 14 Pro Max that is stainless steel. So the iPhone 15 Pro Max, the sides is built out of grade 5 titanium, and this, in my use case, doesn't show off fingerprints like the stainless steel does. Like, this blue titanium still does to a certain extent, but it's definitely not as visible as the 14 Pro Max. Now, with the 15 Pro and Pro Max, Apple ditched the mute button for an action button on the 15 Pro Max, well, and the Pro. I'm just reiterating the same thing. But this can be remapped to a bunch of different things. In fact, you can use Siri shortcuts to remap any app you want to use with the action button. Now, I'm currently using mine as the mute button until I kind of find an action for me that fits just like my personal thing. But for now, I've been used to it on the iPhone with the mute switch, so I'm just gonna keep it as is right now with the mute. But that's really it for the action button. A lot of cool things you can do. If you use the camera, for example, it works as a shutter button too, so that's pretty cool. Now, USB-C. It's finally here on the 15 Pro Max. I was gonna say 14 Pro. USB-C is finally here, so say goodbye to your lightning cables unless you have the AirPods Max. AirPods Pro got USB-C, but AirPods Max still on lightning. Granted, for me, it didn't really matter. Like, I'm really happy though, because I can now use one cable for all my products. Like, I don't need to carry a MagSafe charger if I don't want to, but nonetheless, I've just gotten used to it because of this having lightning. I just didn't want to carry the extra cable, so I'd use MagSafe charging, whatnot. So as of right now, I'm still using this mainly for MagSafe charging. But the fact is, like, when I want to charge my phone in the car, or if I just have a USB-C cable next to me and I'm low on battery, I know the 15 Pro Max can charge now. So I'm really happy with that. Now, I also want to point out the fact that this blue titanium, I absolutely love it. And I said in the beginning of this video, but this gold color, well, I really do like it. I actually didn't want to say goodbye to it. Like, I kind of wish this would have been possible to have on the 15 Pro and Pro Max, but there is like the titanium color spectrum, and titanium, certain colors can't be used or can't be made with titanium. So that is a bummer, like that dark red that for the scarlet red that was always rumored. I don't know if that's actually possible with titanium. I did see some articles based on that. Nonetheless, let's move on to the front of the display. Both of them are great. They're about the same and they're great to view content. The one thing that may look, it's easier to see in real rather than video is the fact, oh, there's AirDrop. But it's the fact that there is thinner bezels on the 15 Pro versus the 14 Pro. So it's easier to notice that in person, but that's also there as well. Now overall, the design may look strikingly familiar, but Apple did make some great improvements to the quality and the comfort of the phone. And look, if a phone ain't broke, or if anything ain't broke, there's no need to fix it. You just add on to make the user experience better. That's how I see things. The design, it's fine. And I don't think we need to have a drastic design change every year with any smartphone for that matter, whether it be Samsung or OnePlus or anything. If the design that you like is unique to you, like Google is using the same camera bar with their Pixels, with the upcoming Pixel 8. At the time of this recording, it hasn't been unveiled yet, but there has been leaks, and that's their iconic design. If a design ain't broke, no need to fix it. This is perfectly fine. So Apple, you can keep using it as long as you continue to bring some improvements that just make the comfort and the user experience better. Now moving on to performance with both of these devices. Day-to-day use, I'll tell you, it's about the same. Like, I use the 14 Pro Max since launch, so it's been over a year, and I've been using the 15 Pro Max since launch, and it's still fairly new, but I'll probably be using this as my main iPhone until next year. Now, there isn't any huge difference that I notice, and my routine is pretty much filming YouTube and TikTok videos, browsing on Twitter or X, I still want to call it Twitter, sending emails, surfing the web, texting, and all of that stuff. And really, it's been the same. Now, the A17 Pro on the 15 Pro Max, it's an upgraded chip over the A16, but it necessarily isn't a reason to completely upgrade your phone. Just because there's an A17 Pro, that shouldn't push you to upgrade. Now, Apple touts the gaming performance on the 15 Pro series with the A17 Pro chip, but I personally have yet to try out any of the titles Apple has talked about during its keynote. And up until now, the only games that I really have tested are Call of Duty Mobile, Agar.io, and yeah, for some reason I like playing that game, and both have been performing very well. Now, I also want to point out that the release of iOS 17 with the 15 Pro Max has been much smoother than when Apple released the 14 Pro Max with iOS 16. I haven't noticed any bugs on iOS 17 with the 15 Pro versus a lot of bugs that I've come across with iOS 16 on the 14 Pro Max when it was released last year. But day-to-day performance and software, it's really good. Yes, improvements over numbers from A16 to A17 Pro, but like I said, day-to-day usage, it's not going to vary too much. Now, before I do move on to cameras, I want to quickly talk about the overheating situation that has been going on with many iPhone 15 Pro Max users. Here's my take on it. Well, here's my experience on it more so. I haven't experienced anything like that, any overheating. I've experienced some warmth, but that's to be expected when I'm using heavy intensive apps, or if I'm charging or anything like that, then it does get warm to the touch, but so does a 14 Pro Max, and so does other smartphones as well. I personally have not experienced any overheating, but I'd like to hear your thoughts and your comments and your experiences if you have gone through overheating, comments down below. But that's just been my personal experience. Now let's talk about the camera. So the iPhone 14 Pro Max right here, it brought the 48 megapixel camera, and this year Apple does bring some improvements to the 15 Pro Max. So this comes included with a 5x telephoto lens, which is something that I do appreciate. Farther optical zoom, and I hope next year they bring even more, like 6, maybe even 10x optical zoom. But the improvements nonetheless is very good. Apple's photonic engine combines pixels to make them larger to absorb more light, and it combines it with a full 40 megapixel frame. And now the result is a 24 megapixel photo, which is now the default. The default before, up until now, was 12, even though it had a 48 megapixel camera. Now, night mode default is still 12, so just do keep that in mind. But when you go to the camera app, Apple has denoted 24 millimeter, 28 millimeter, and 35 millimeter focal length. So 1x is 24, 1.2x is 28, and 1.5x is 35 millimeter. If you go back, see 24 is 1x zoom. So it's good to know that Apple did put that in the camera app. Now, A17 Pro, it does help with software features like Smart HDR5 and advanced portrait mode captures. Ultra wide is about the same, as well as video. It's just phenomenal as always, and it's a great device to recommend, especially for those who are making content for either. So whether you have the 14 Pro Max or you do pick up the 15 Pro Max, you can't go wrong with the camera, and even with normal photos too. Like, you still can't go wrong with just because this is out doesn't mean this camera is outdated. This is still a stellar camera that still competes with devices released in 2023. So if you do have this, you don't need to be too concerned about not having the 15 Pro Max's camera on your 14 Pro Max. Now, there is one thing I want to note, is that since the 15 Pro Max has USB-C, you can now connect it to external storage and directly record your content onto there. So if you're shooting something like ProRes or just recording a lot of content and you don't want it to take up a lot of space on your phone, just do keep that in mind. You can just use USB-C cable, plug it into your SSD, and you can record it that way too. So it really does help knowing that there's a USB-C cable. And if maybe you have the 256 gig model like I do right here, and you don't want to put all of your content on your iPhone, you do have that. Just do keep that in mind. That's going to bring me into the battery life. So this one is a little bit more evident in which device performs better in day-to-day use, and it's going to be the 15 Pro Max. It has a physical, slightly larger battery capacity than the 14 Pro Max. Apple doesn't release the numbers. There are breakdowns of the numbers with these devices, but Apple doesn't usually release the numbers out in the open. And paired with the A17 Pro, 15 Pro Max in my use has been holding up much longer than the 14 Pro Max. Like, I'm getting easily 8 to 9 hours of screen on time on the 15 Pro Max when compared to like barely like 7 hours of screen on time with the 14 Pro Max. And yes, I have always on display on for both. Now, wired charging on the USB-C right here for the iPhone, it means I can now use all of my USB-C cables. And I already said that before, but I'm just saying it again. It just makes life easier. However, charging speeds is still the same as the 14 Pro Max, but at least, you know, you can charge your friend's older iPhones or your accessories like AirPods because of USB-C. So that's also good to know. Like, if you have that option, you're all set to go. And that's going to lead me into the price with both of these devices. So 15 Pro Max, it starts at $1199 for 256 gigs of storage. That's the starting price. The starting price for the 14 Pro Max was $1099 for 128 gigs of storage. Apple doesn't sell the 14 Pro or 14 Pro Max brand new anymore. However, the 256 gig model was also priced at $1199. Huh, that sounds very familiar. So there really isn't a price hike. They just got rid of the 128 gig model. So you can kind of see either way. Like, there is, but there isn't. The starting price is $1199, so it starts at a higher price, but to start at the higher price, they got rid of the lower configuration model, which was 128 gig. So in essence, you're really forced, those who would have gotten 128 gigs of storage, which I truly do think that if that were the case, if there was a 128 gig model of the 15 Pro Max, then they would go pick, a lot of consumers would pick that up instead. And that's bringing me to my final thoughts and answering the question. If you have the 14 Pro Max, is it worth upgrading to the 15 Pro Max? No, there isn't. There is no need to upgrade to the 15 Pro Max if you have the 14 Pro Max. In fact, I honestly do think if you have the 13 Pro Max, there's no need to upgrade to the 15 Pro Max either. Now, a lot of users have reported that their battery has degraded a lot to lower than 90% of battery capacity. That's, I mean, I personally haven't experienced it, but I'm not surprised either. Granted, if you want to upgrade then go right ahead. But with the upgrades that you get from 14 Pro, especially to 15 Pro, I don't think there's really too much of a need of upgrading. Yes, you're gonna get some upgrades, but it's gonna be like very minimal. If you had a 12 Pro Max or older, you'll see a substantial upgrade. You're gonna be like, wow, this is a lot of good things coming to my new device. So if you do have a 15 or 12 Pro Max or older, I think that's where you're gonna get most of the upgrade. You're gonna get that sense of feeling that you got a good deal. Now, also, I want to add that if you're able to find a 14 Pro Max for a very good deal, like around $800 to $1,000 maybe, I would say pick one up. I mean, I was actually looking at earlier today, like the 14 Pro, and I found some pretty good pricing for like $750. That is actually very good. $750 for a 128 gig model, just a smaller version of this, but you're getting a flagship device that competes with 2023 competitors. So just keep that in mind. But other than that, I also do love the 15 Pro Max, and I'm going to be using it. I'm going to be testing this, continuing to test it at least with other devices as well, and I'll share with you guys my updates throughout the coming weeks and coming months. But I hope you guys did enjoy. I'm gonna have to say goodbye to my iPhone 14 Pro Max because my Apple trading box came in today, so it's gonna be my last video with the 14 Pro Max. So I gotta say goodbye. But there you have it. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, definitely be sure to superman that like button, comment down below. Check out my latest wallpaper pack, Vortex. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below. And best of all, share this video because it really does help out the channel a lot and will help push my content out to more people. That's been it for me, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode.